So we have a good understanding of some of the technologies that are used behind the scenes in order to customize the UI. Now let's take a look at some of the ways that we can, in fact, customize the UI. We're going to start off with one of the tools that we have known as Application Display Templates. So let's go ahead, we'll take a look at Application Display Templates. So we'll call them ADTs for short, since Application Display Template is kind of a mouthful. So ADTs. ADTs, as the name kind of tells us, is a template that we can apply to an application to configure the way that the application will display its content. Okay, so a way to customize an application. So at the end of the day, ADTs just configure the way an application will display its content. What's cool about ADTs is that you can manage them through the control panel of Liferay. So you can not only manage them, but also create them as well. On top of that, if you don't want to work with ADTs in the UI right away, you can open up your favorite text editor to create an ADT using either FreeMarker or Velocity. And then when we're dealing with ADTs, we can either have an ADT within a specific site, or we can expose the ADT to every single site in Liferay using the global scope or the global context. So let's give an example of ADTs over here. So starting from the left, you can create an ADT for a number of different things, and you can create them either within a specific site, or as we see within this screenshot here, we can create them in the global context, exposing them to every single site. From there, you can edit the ADT or even create the ADT yourself using the editor within Liferay. And finally, once you have the ADT created, you can then select the ADT within specific applications. So we'll get into some of the details pretty soon. So when we're creating ADTs, we're going to either use FreeMarker or Velocity, right? If you're not sure which one to use, we at Liferay recommend using FreeMarker. What's cool about ADTs is not only do they work with some of the default applications within Liferay, they also work within our own custom applications of Liferay as well. The idea here is, as backend developers, yes, we have full control over how our application looks and feels. But what if, over in the front end, maybe we want different ways of displaying how the application displays its content, right? We could modify the JSPs behind the scenes, but it would be a little bit easier to use ADTs, right? Create the ADT, select it, it displays one way, right? Pick another one, it can display another way. And what's also very nice about ADTs, there's no build process, there's no deploying. You just apply and then you just work with it. Now, a couple different use cases of ADTs, and these are some of the things that you can actually take a look at yourself if you wanted to. Over in the asset publisher, there are different ways in which we can display the assets that are in the asset publisher. Maybe we want them in a list, or maybe we want them item by item, or maybe we want cards. Right? All of this can be done using an ADT. And you can have all of these different points of views stored, and you can configure which one is being used at any given time. Maybe within the navigation application, you want to display the navigation a little bit differently. Maybe you want to use bullet points, maybe you want to use arrows, maybe you only want to specify specific levels. Each of those different use cases can be implemented using an ADT. And maybe we want some sort of audience targeting support within the navigation layout as well. Right? Maybe specific users can only see specific sites, or maybe specific users, based on what they have done within Liferay, if we want to guide them somewhere else, we can achieve that using application display templates. Now, Liferay's default applications do support ADTs, but not all of them. So the list that we have here are the ones that we do support. These are the most common applications that we have found would require an ADT, or at least would be useful to have the capability of applying an ADT to it. So a couple ones I'll highlight here. Asset publisher, and that's a very, very big one, right? Since the asset publisher can display different assets or a lot of assets, we want to be able to have control over how those assets are being displayed. Blogs is another good one. Navigation menu, that too is a pretty good one as well. Now, with ADTs, not only do we have control over the way the application displays content, we also have access to a number of Liferay's APIs. Now, when we're trying to use these APIs, we first need to use a service locator, right? So from the ADT, there needs to be a way to access the OSGI service registry, and the bridge between the ADT and the service registry is the service locator. Right. On top of that, we also have access to a number of different variables. These are the common ones that we will typically use. Some of the ones I want to highlight here. Theme display object helps us grab Liferay specific parameters. The render request object, right? You can have a bunch of parameters stored within the render request object that you may want to retrieve. And there's a couple other ones here as well, but those are two of probably the most common ones you'll see. On top of that, custom objects can also be made available. They can be retrieved within an ADT. So when we're creating an ADT, we can follow these sort of basic steps. Now this is for implementing and adding an ADT for a custom application. So we start off with our application, and what we're going to do is create a component that extends base portlet display template handler. So we will extend that, override any methods, or implement the methods that are needed. And then from there, we'll then configure the permissions of our application so that we can control who is able to apply or configure an ADT. From there, we're going to configure over on the JSP side some sort of logic so that when an ADT is selected, we'll know about it. So we can do that using this Liferay UI DDM template selector. So an ADT is selected, this tag will then pick up or recognize that a specific ADT is selected, and then finally we'll use this template renderer tag to actually display or render the ADT. Now let's go ahead, we'll take a look at an example of creating an ADT for our media gallery application. So what we're going to do with the media gallery application is create a custom carousel just for our example here. So this is the steps that we're going to be going through at a high level. So we're first going to add the media gallery to our Liferay page. From there, we're going to upload a couple of images so that we can actually see some of the images within the media gallery. From there, we'll create the ADT for the media gallery, and then we'll take a look once we refresh of the ADT in action. So let's go ahead and work on that exercise.